You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. Last week, Brian Kelly was asked about Malik Nabers, and this was his Monday press conference before the Georgia State game. And it was in context of, awards and the Biletnikoff Award, as we talk so much about Jaden for Heisman. Here's what Brian Kelly said last Monday.
I think he's the best wide receiver in the country. And I'm sure that Coach Day is going to say that his guy is the best. And I totally understand that. But Malik Nabers, in terms of what he does on jet sweeps, what he does in terms of yards after the catch, catching the ball down the field, I think he is multi-dimensional in what he does, leading the country in receiving yards. I think he's the best receiver in the country and deserving of being a Biletnikoff Award winner.
So Brian Kelly really said it just about perfectly there. He thinks his guy should win it. Coach Day at Ohio State very likely thinks his guy should win it, his guy being Marvin Harrison Jr. And, of course, the Biletnikoff semifinalists were announced on Monday, and two LSU receivers, both Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas, were listed as semifinalists for the award, and they've both been awesome. We know that Brian Thomas leads the country in receiving touchdowns. Malik Nabers leads the country in receiving yards. They've been awesome, and both are worthy of being considered here. But it's my very sincere feeling that Malik Nabers is not going to win this award. Now, I want to be really clear. In my opinion, Malik Nabers is having the best season of any receiver in the country. When you look at, so there is an objective and a subjective component to all of these awards. The objective component are the stats. The subjective component is what you make of those statistics. For example, Malik Nabers is not leading the country in receptions. That is Malik Washington from Virginia, who's got 96 receptions. That's 16 more than Malik Nabers. But Malik Nabers has more receiving yards on fewer catches. So, again, the subjective component of this is what do you interpret those stats to be? Objectively, Malik Nabers, 1,424 receiving yards on 80 catches, 129 yards per game. That leads the country. 12 touchdowns, which is second in the country behind only Brian Thomas Jr. and Marvin Harrison Jr. Excuse me, it's third. Thomas has 14, Marvin Harrison has 13, and then Malik Nabers has 12. So you can interpret from all of these statistics whatever you want. And there are 10 semifinalists that are all having great seasons and are amazing players. Of course, we know a lot of the names on here. Marvin Harrison Jr., Keon Coleman, Roma Dunze, Luther Burden, Nabers, Brian Thomas. Brock Bowers is on there. I don't think he should be. He's a tight end. He's not a receiver, but that's another story for another day. Xavier Legette is on there as well, who's having a great season quietly for a bad team. So when you look objectively, you could make the case for Malik Nabers because he's leading the country in receiving yards. Objectively, you could make a case for Malik Washington because he leads the country in receptions. Objectively, you can make a case for Brian Thomas because he leads the country in receiving touchdowns. See what I'm saying? So the subjective component is really what's going to swing this one way or another for the Biletnikoff. But what happens a lot of times with these awards is they become Lifetime Achievement Awards. And you can roll your eyes and hem and haw and huff and puff, and I don't blame you because I've done that plenty over the years. But that has both benefited LSU and worked as a detriment to LSU. Here's the best example I can give you. In 2018, Grant Delpit was the best defensive back in college football. Grant Delpit in 2018 was otherworldly. 13 games, 74 tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, a forced fumble, 14 passes defended, and 5 interceptions. Grant Delpit in 2018 did not win the Thorpe Award. DeAndre Baker from Georgia did. Remember when I told you, and I know stats confuse people and numbers confuse people on radio. Grant Delpit had 74 tackles. DeAndre Baker had 40. Nearly doubled him in tackles. Grant Delpit had 9.5 tackles for loss. DeAndre Baker had 2. Grant Delpit had 5 sacks in 2018. DeAndre Baker had goose egg, 0. Each player had a forced fumble. Delpit had 14 passes defensed, where Baker had 12. Grant Delpit had 5 interceptions. Baker had 2. Grant Delpit had an otherworldly season in 2018. He was the best defensive back. I would argue in 2018, Grant Delpit was actually the best defensive player in all of college football. But DeAndre Baker won the award because DeAndre Baker was a household name at that point. In 2019, Grant Delpit's numbers all took a step back, and Grant Delpit played much of the 2019 season limited due to injury. Now, he only missed 1 game that year, but he was on a national championship team, and after the amazing 2018 season that he had, he carried that notoriety into 2019, and of course, as you know, Grant Delpit in 2019 won the Thorpe Award, despite having fewer tackles, about literally half as many tackles for loss, just 2 sacks where he had 5 the year before, 9 passes defended where he had 14 the year before, 2 interceptions where he had 5 the year before. Grant Delpit was a lesser player in 2019 than he was in 2018, but he won the Thorpe. So my point is, this has happened plenty of times with these awards, and there's times where it's benefited LSU, like it did Grant Delpit in 2019. And I sat here and I praised Grant Delpit as the Thorpe Award winner, and he should have won it in 2018, but I was glad he won it in 2019. So it would be hypocritical of me today to bemoan Marvin Harrison being the front runner for this award when I know and you know that Malik Nabers is having the best season of any wide receiver in college football this year. That is objective fact, and it is my subjective opinion. However, Marvin Harrison a year ago had 77 catches and 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns, and he was awesome. And came back this season, and instead of catching passes from a guy that's going to win NFL Rookie of the Year and C.J. Stroud, he's catching passes from Kyle McCord, and the offense hasn't exactly been churning, but he's still a 1,000-yard receiver on an offense that isn't very good. Jackson Smith and Jigba's in the NFL. Your quarterback isn't what you had a year ago. Everybody's gunning for you, and he's still a 1,000-yard receiver with 13 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison is a great player. Every mock draft has him as the number 1 receiver and the first receiver off the board. He's a great player, and he's probably going to win the Biletnikoff on reputation, not on the job he's done this year. He's having a very good year. It's not as good a season as Malik Nabers is having, but Grant Delpit won the Thorpe in 2019 when that wasn't as good a year as the one he had before, when he got hosed and they gave it to DeAndre Baker, who was certainly not worthy in 2018, but he won a career Lifetime Achievement Award. I think that's what's going to happen here, unfortunately, for Malik Nabers, whereas he's the best receiver in the country this year, and he is worthy of winning that award this year, but he's probably not going to win the award because the guy who is going to win a Lifetime Achievement Award, which we see happen very often, both for and against LSU players when it comes to these national awards. Now, if there is a consolation prize for Malik Nabers, it's going to be a pretty heavy one too. ESPN.com, their collection of draft analysts debated the top 10 picks. It's a piece up at ESPN.com if you want to go read it. And they got the New York Jets projected with the 10th pick in the draft. So it's Field Yates and it's Miller and Reed and all those guys who are just having like a back and forth in text about who should be the pick for each team picking top 10. And they're projecting the Jets to pick 10th overall. And if you scroll down, they've got Malik Nabers going 10th overall to the New York Jets. By the way, slot value, the projected slot value for the 10th pick in this year's draft is $21.1 million with a signing bonus of $12.3 million. Yeah, I want Malik Nabers to win the Biletnikoff. He's worthy. He's the best receiver in the country. He's probably not going to win it. But that would be a pretty nice consolation prize. $21 million contract and a $12 million signing bonus. Either way, Malik Nabers is having an awesome year. He'll be all SEC. He should have a lot of All-American honors as well. And he's going to be a very rich man here in a few months. So great season for Malik Nabers. We'll see how it all plays out with award season right around the bend. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.